Education in the United States has come a long way in the past decades, and there is still much work to be done. In my video, I will be giving an overview of how laws and policies have affected changes in education and what these changes mean for students and educators. In the earliest days of the United States, there was no formal system of education. Rather, education was offered privately with in-home tutors and through religious organizations such as the church. Parents taught their children at home, and families that could afford to hired tutors. With the influx of immigrants from different parts of Europe, public schools were established to impose social order in a common school setting. The Boston Latin School, which was founded in 1635, was the first public school that ever opened in the United States. In these early public schools, classes were given on virtues of family, religion, and community, and not in teaching literacy or mathematical skills as they are today. In a U.S. Census survey that was taken in 1850, every 9 out of 10 people considered themselves literate. During this time, education was closely tied to religion to instill in students Puritan values. Education in the United States is characterized by a highly decentralized system. The U.S. Constitution does not mention education as a responsibility of the federal government, and the 10th Amendment gives the authority and responsibility to provide education to each state. Most states have in turn transferred this responsibility over to localities, which means that local school boards govern policies that affect schools in their districts. The state of Massachusetts spearheaded the movement for standardizing education in the early 1800s. Educational reform efforts were concentrated in New England, and it would take a long time for these progressive changes to take effect in other parts of the country. Let's take a look now at some of the laws and policies that have brought about changes in education. The Civil Rights Act of 1964. Education in the United States was segregated based on race up through the 1960s. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 made discrimination on the basis of race, color, or national origin unlawful in any program or activity that received federal financial assistance. This law also prohibited the denial of equal access to education due to students' limited proficiency in English. All students, regardless of their language abilities, are granted equal access to education in public institutions of learning. Each school district is responsible for eliminating the barriers to an equal education, whether this means creating supplemental language classes for students who lack proficiency in English to ensuring that students of all ethnic and cultural backgrounds are evaluated in the same manner for admissions to colleges and universities. The Equal Educational Opportunities Act of 1974. The Equal Educational Opportunities Act made discrimination against faculty, staff, and students on the basis of race, gender, color, and ethnicity illegal in public institutes of learning. The law also prohibits racial segregation and requires that school districts take the appropriate action to ensure that each student receive an equal chance at receiving an education. In 1971, nearly 3,000 Chinese students were enrolled in San Francisco public schools. While about a third of these students were offered English language supplemental instruction with the integration of schools, many of the students were placed into special education classes. With the help of Edward H. Steinman, a public interest lawyer, the parents of the Chinese students filed a class action lawsuit against the San Francisco School Board. The students argued that they were being denied the chance at education because of their limited English ability. They further argued that under the 14th Amendment in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, they were entitled to special help that would allow them to be fully engaged in school. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that providing students with the same textbooks, materials, and teachers did not constitute equal opportunity for education. The lack of support
created using Powtoon.